wandered down the halls near aimlessly as you searched for your room. It shouldn't have been so hard to find a room in a hotel, but unfortunately for you, this place had no order. Room 412 should have been right between room 410 and 414, but in its place was 416. Was your room even located on the 4th floor? You were unsure at this point.
412. 412. 412. It should be here. But these aren't in numerical order. Maybe if I retrace my steps, I'll see that I missed something. No, these aren't in order either. Are the villains trying to disorient us? No, maybe I'm thinking too hard.
You overheard a familiar voice muttering down the hall. It was nearing you, but you couldn't quite point out exactly who it was. As you continued down the dimly lit hallway, the voice gradually got louder. Soon, it sounded like it was right in front of you. It was right in front of you! You bumped into the source of the sound and nearly fell backward. That was an oddly soft wall you would run into.
I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to bump into you, I swear. Are you okay? Did I hurt you?
Now you knew who it was. Who else went on and on that way? It had to be Deku.
No, I'm fine, Midoriya.
You brushed off whatever initial shock you'd felt and stood up straight again.
You said 412?
The room. That was your room. And if he'd seen it, you needed to know where.
What? Oh, the woman at the desk told me to look for room 412. But I can't seem to find it anywhere.
Izuku replied to you without hesitation. His brain was running at full capacity at all times after all.
She did. That's my room too. Can we look together?
You'd been grouped with Midoriya? That was unexpected. You expected someone like him to end up with Bakugo or Todoroki, but it looked like he was stuck with you. You didn't know him too well, but he probably didn't mind.
Yeah, this must be a test.
He nodded, accepting your offer. Was he always thinking about hero work? That looked like what the hero course did to all of them. The two of you spent minute after minute hauling luggage around the 4th floor. After a while, Izuku did offer to take your bags for you. You declined, but were starting to wish you hadn't. Double checking, triple checking, nothing provided results, and it was beginning to tire you.
Maybe it's on another floor.
You pitched your idea to the now pacing and muttering mess of a boy. He had hardly heard you through his thick thought bubble.
Of course. If all of these are out of order, there's no telling how disorienting the next floors are. It must be somewhere else.
Had he seriously not considered that before? You hesitated to tell him because you thought he'd already checked the other floors. Then again, this wouldn't be the first time someone had to suggest something obvious to him. Izuku led you to the elevator and pressed the button to move down a floor. One floor at a time, that's how you would do it. The wait was long and Midoriya appeared lost in thought the entire time. Soon, the quiet elevator lowered you to the 3rd floor.
Alright, let's check around here for the...
I found it!
Midoriya interrupted you with his outburst from slightly down the hall. Sure enough, on the 3rd floor, 412 was set between 310 and 314. It made you wonder what happened to room 312. Never mind any of your questions or concerns. It was time to sit! Finally, after all that training, you got to sit on a sturdy piece of furniture. The odd circumstances didn't even cross your mind as you rushed past Izuku onto the red couch and sat against the wall in the front of your hotel room.
You're smart.
Midoriya smiled widely as he shut the door behind you. After the click of the lock settled your arrangement, he too sat on the couch on the separate end.
So, it looks like we're going to be spending the night here. I'm glad Class B's teacher was able to find us some rooms.
He nodded to himself.
Me too.
You nodded, stretching out. As you finished your relieving moment and turned to Izuku, you were met with an intense stare. He stopped when he noticed you looking though.
What?
You questioned.
Oh, it's nothing. It's just your side. It's scratched.
He mentioned. Right! That cut you'd gotten during practice. You had forgotten all about it when the bus broke down. It wasn't bleeding anymore and the pain had gone away.
Is it bad?
Izuku sounded concerned.
No! Just a silly surface wound. I'm sure I'll be fine once we get to Recovery Girl.
You responded fine, but Izuku did not seem to agree with you. He looked worried, face sporting a frown.
You should really make sure it gets cleaned and patched up.
He stood up and walked towards the bathroom, opening the door and disappearing inside. For a while, you wondered why. What was he even doing in there? All that rustling and banging had to mean something.
They didn't really have bandages, so I...
Eventually, your questions were answered. Izuku exited the bathroom with a first aid kit and other things.
Bandages? I'm not bleeding.
You tilted your head a few times, trying to see what he had come up with. Deku would surely want to know how to wrap wounds, so it couldn't have been anything outrageous.
You were! It's important to keep it sealed, even if you weren't bleeding anymore.
The reason this green-haired boy was panicking was unannounced to you, but in the midst of his worry, he made a good point. Who knew what lurked in this hotel? An infection was the last thing you needed right now.
Well, alright, Midoriya. How do you plan on helping this though?
You asked, agreeing to let him help you. Izuku smiled warily before pulling from behind him a roll of toilet paper.
The toiletries here aren't soft or crumbly. They're sort of like paper. This can make a good temporary bandage when it's used correctly.
His smile was unsure, almost as if he wanted you to fact-check him. You nodded to say you trusted him, but as for the quality of his information, well, nobody knows.
Okay. And how do you expect that to stick?
You could ask Zero. Other than that, all options look to be off the table.
The first aid kit doesn't have gauze, but it does have some tape left. Skin safe, of course.
His smile looked more sure now. It faded as he began to put together his makeshift bandaging. He looked more focused as he wiped your skin clean with alcohol pads and waved them dry. He seemed focused, not on the process, but on keeping you comfortable. Izuku knew he had the ability to hurt you if he wasn't careful, because even though you'd felt fine before, you flinched each time he pressed around the cuts. They were not completely healed after all.
Normally, I tell you to take a shower.
He spoke under his breath. Tape pulled her securely between his teeth as he tore pieces to use.
But because of how these are, I know it'll hurt if you do.
Midoriya gently secured a large, double-over section of toilet paper to your side. He was right to say the texture was that of paper, because you would surely hate to wipe with whatever he placed on you.
But shouldn't I shower anyway? We were training and...
You tried to finish your sentence, but you couldn't quite bring yourself when you noticed Izuku lost in thought. He was staring at your waist. Your top moved with one of his hands as the other carefully ran across the bandaging he just applied.
Might need another layer.
He mumbled, not paying all too much attention to what you said. Until you called him, that is.
Izuku!
You leaned as close to eye level with him as you could, and it startled him.
Oh, sorry.
Whatever it was, the name or the sharp eye contact that drew his attention was unknown. What you did know was that he quickly backed away from you, unhanding your clothes and swiping your side a bit as he stumbled backwards on the couch. You tried not to let him know it hurt, but you couldn't help the instinctual jolt away from him as it followed.
Did I? Oh no, I'm really sorry. I didn't mean to hurt you. I was just scared I was making you uncomfortable, and then you looked at me and said my name, and I got really scared, and...
He was mumbling to himself again.
Midoriya, it's fine, I was just...
You attempted to calm him down, but he was too far gone. It appeared his stunt of focus was interrupted by his feelings of embarrassment. Maybe you should try his first name again?
Izuku?
It worked. His muttering paused and he looked up at you. His expression was unreadable for a moment.
You said it again.
He sat up and paused, clearly trying to deduce something. Was that seriously all it took to calm him down?
Sad what?
You questioned, holding a hand to the throbbing pain on your midsection. He had a harder hit than you thought he would, especially for an accident. He must have really sought to keep a light hand before.
My name. I'm sorry if that sounds odd, it's just...
He looked away from you, not without glancing at the hand you held to your side.
Ever since Kachan and I got into UA, well, I guess I didn't realize people knew my name.
That was true. Bakugo had given Izuku that nickname, and it spread like a rash. Midoriya was strung to have it flipped over to be his hero name. Ever since then, no one had ever called him anything but Deku or Midoriya. I hope I'm not crossing any lines by using it. It just seems to capture your attention. Your response was direct and apologetic.
It's not that.
Midoriya shook his head.
I have no problem with it, it's just, new.
He mustered another smile and met your eyes again. You quickly moved your hand, but you knew he'd seen it. Your intention wasn't to make him feel bad, it just hurt was all. Well, Izuku, how about we go to sleep? It's getting late. You tested him. His smile formed more properly this time.
Yeah, but I really should add another layer or two to that. I wouldn't want it to tear in your sleep.
He was calm enough to say that without flustering himself. Perhaps the same focus he had earlier had returned? No, that wasn't it. The look in his eyes as he carefully followed the same process he had before matched the look he had during training today. He wasn't just focused on helping you, he was in a hero mindset. It would have been endearing to you had you not known about his crippling hero complex. Never mind that. Once Izuku had finished putting a more cushiony layer over your midriff, he backed away to view what he had done. He seemed proud of himself, rightfully so, because he had truly done his best in this endeavor.
This doesn't hurt, does it?
He moved a hand he had used to hold up your top down to your waist, his second hand doing the same on the opposite side. Midoriya applied a gentle amount of pressure with both hands, and shockingly, it doesn't hurt at all. Wow, it doesn't... You shook your head and looked down at his hands. It was a bit interesting, looking at him. He still resembled an entirely different state of mind as he sat there tending to you. After a couple more squeezes, though, your own mind wandered. You attempted to fight it by taking a more literal view of things. You looked first at his arms. They were freckled spotchily. It was an interesting pattern in contrast to the multitude of horizontal scars over his hands. His hands. You couldn't quite see them. The fabric of your shirt had completely fallen on top of them as he continued to pressure check. This massive literal examination only worked for as long as you could focus on it though. Once Izuku began to gently drag his hands up and down your midsection to check for sturdiness, that strategy was less effective.
It's not slipping. I think you're good for tonight. Let me know if it gets...
As Midoriya lifted his head to make proper eye contact with you while he spoke, he noticed an all too familiar expression on your face. Heat had risen up here to your cheeks, and you were clearly averting your eyes from him. Had he made you nervous? He wasn't quite sure, but it seemed you were timid in comparison to earlier. Izuku slowly removed his hands from under your shirt and placed them on your knees, watching you closely.
Are you alright?
He asked, voice saturated in concern. I'm fine, nothing is wrong. You brushed off his concern, though you were still twiddling around. You said it seems alright. You aimed to change the subject. It was time for bed anyways. Midoriya had to be exhausted from today's training after all.
Yeah, I applied just as much pressure as a mattress would, and you didn't flinch. I think you'll be alright to sleep.
He nodded. Would you be able to get him back to his usual mindset anytime soon? It was beginning to get uncomfortable. Usually Deku was the one getting flustered, but right now he was calm and you were the one stumbling over yourself. All you could do was nod. Eventually, Midoriya backed away from you to allow you to change. It was just the break you needed. You walked into the bedroom with your bag and pulled out your bedclothes. You were met with a shock as you turned to put them on. That can't be right. You said that louder than you'd meant to. Who wouldn't though? This was a room for two people, wasn't it?
Is everything okay in there?
Midoriya was approaching, but you didn't hear him entirely. You wish he had knocked when he entered though. Izuku was walking in on you with your shirt hanging from your neck. You rushed to put it back on, slipping it onto your arms as he stepped forward.
Only one.
He questioned. It seemed he hadn't noticed you. It wasn't surprising because the two of you were very confused about the same thing. Be it some twist of fate or some odd plot device, the sign in front of you was absurd. There was only one bed.
I'm sure this is a mistake. I mean, our room was on the wrong floor,
you mentioned.
You're right, but I don't think we can do anything about it. I should sleep on the couch. You're injured and I don't want to hurt you any more than you already are.
Midoriya was shifting from foot to foot behind you. The way he spoke was not that of his usual self. He still sounded like he was thinking tactically as opposed to how he normally would.
No! No. Izuku, you can't stay in here.
You looked at the bed once again. There may have been only one, but it was huge. No reason for him to sleep on the couch at all.
Even so, what if I do get hurt? I'd rather you be here to help me.
Were you doubting his toilet paper bandages? You were. You were doubting his toilet paper bandages. Had you finally choked him up? Gotten at least some Midoriya-like response? You had. For once, you managed to make him think about this situation. You didn't know why, but for some reason you were pleased by it. You prodded?
Well, I suppose you may be right.
He was looking away from you now, rocking back and forth. You had gotten him just as nervous as he had you. Midoriya was clearly trying to rationalize what you had said. You were correct. His creation was his creation. If it tore or fell off, he would have been the one to replace it. So it was settled. Midoriya would sleep on one end, you on the other. You attempted to change your clothes once Izuku had left, but noticed that would be more difficult than planned. When you attempted to lift your hats over your head, you felt a painful sting around you. You could hear his pacing around come to a stop when you audibly expressed distress. You'd gotten off your shirt just fine earlier. Why was your wound hurting now? Things began making sense over time though. You'd encounter a villain with no flashy or visible quirk, but they had hit you with something unique to them. That kitty had claws, and it was looking like they had hit you with a concealed weapon.
Are you okay?
Izuku rushed in soon after you'd realized what was going on. He sounded remarkably worried. Perhaps your cry of pain was louder than you thought.
I'm fine, I think.
You had to sit down. The more time that had passed, the more painful things became.
I don't think that villain I fought had a mutant quirk.
You huffed.
Really? Did I jot it down wrong? What's happening?
He was frantic in his efforts to gain information. Midoriya sat on the other side of you that wasn't injured to avoid hurting you.
Oh no, this is bad. The only time I've seen a quirk like this was...
No need to type out all of his panic-filled sentences. Long story short, he felt a little bit responsible for your pain. You hadn't started hurting until he tried to fix it after all.
Izuku, I don't care.
You began to steady your breathing so you could talk to him properly, though you still sounded restrained.
I just want to go to sleep, and I won't be able to get here on my own.
If he really felt like he was at fault, he would oblige to helping you. You at least hoped he would, because the pain you felt only got worse when you attempted to care for yourself.
Are you sure?
He sounded worried again now, not for you, but his skills. It was much like the worry he had harbored while bandaging you. If he was not careful now, he could really hurt you. His ceaseless trembling made his unease all the more clear, and you all the more impatient.
Hey, just think of it how you did last time. You know, like you're being a hero?
You mentioned his earlier attitude, and almost like a light bulb had been lit, he changed his demeanor.
I was acting like that? I'm sorry I didn't notice.
He stood up and stepped in front of you.
But if it helped, I guess I could do it again.
Izuku was visibly trying to switch attitudes again. It did not take too long. Soon, he was mumbling things he noticed about the quirk's effect on you while looking for a place to start. Now you felt the same hands that helped wrap you on your sides again. This time though, he was focused on your clothes.
That's your pajama shirt over there, right?
He asked, voice wary. For a second you were unsure why.
Yes, that's the one.
You replied simply. If you kept a work-based mindset, it would help him to maintain one as well.
Of course, but, well, I guess what I'm trying to say here is that you shouldn't put it on your own.
Though he was attempting to remain professional, he couldn't help the tint that covered his cheeks. This was embarrassing.
I'll look away, of course. Only one of us needs to see for me to help you, right?
He was starting to let the fear slip through his voice. He brushed it off to save his pride. You just nodded, assuming it would work. It did work, though you couldn't focus the entire time. Izuku ran his hands down the sides of your top, grabbing the bottom hem gently. He did his best not to bump into you or cause you to move more than you had to, knowing it would be painful. It was hard to get your arms up, but you did for as long as you could while Midoriya slid out your day clothes and neatly fixed your bed shirt up top of you. Once he'd let it down, he helped you bring your arms down and laid you on the bed.
I promise I'll stay close to you so you can call me if you need to. Only if you want to, that is. I don't know how long the effects of the quirk will last, so...
Whatever the effects were, it was a bit hard to tell. As you laid still, the pain from before began to subside. Soon enough, you were just fine laying in bed. Neither of your side hurt. That is until you chose to remove the bottoms you'd been wearing. It was a tad warm with another person in bed, and you were under the covers anyhow. It shouldn't have mattered. Sadly for you though, the last bit of stretch you needed to move them past your hips was too much for your body to handle. Perhaps the bend in the midsection was what caused the quirk to activate? Izuku felt the sheets rustling and turned over to check on you.
Are you alright?
He asked, sitting up on his forearm to look over you. You stopped moving, wise decision, and cleared your throat to respond to him. Well, I was trying to get comfortable and... Your sentence trailed as you began to think this was nothing worth troubling him with. It's nothing, Izuku. Just a little pain.
Well, how can I help?
He sounded once again concerned, and you could feel him sit up behind you. No way you'd want to. Don't worry about it, really. You insisted, but he insisted harder. It took quite some time, and eventually, he broke you into telling him the issue. Midoriya was clearly rattled, but he also dispensed a strange look of determination. He did tell you he would be there to help you, and he was determined to live up to his word. A hero may be put in uncomfortable situations after all. After a long list of questions asking for concerns to help you with your specific problem, he raised enough courage to scoot behind you and begin his assistance. What happened next nearly stunned you. Izuku did his best not to move you as he gently slid his left arm beneath your hips. He felt around for a moment, and you could almost hear him panicking when he couldn't find the top seam of your pants. He decided it's best to find the top while using his other hand, and so shortly after, you found his right hand's slinking fingers around your waist and traveling down you to your thigh. Your face was burned red as he continued to feel around for your clothes. Eventually, he found what he thought to be a hook he was looking for. As he pulled and you shifted back into him to stop the fabric from moving, he realized he picked the wrong thing.
I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to. Oh, this is bad. I'm so sorry. I didn't know that was there, and
Boy, was he good at talking. You shushed him quickly, though, feeling well enough to use your own hand to guide us down to where your bottoms really were. You attempted not to squirm as he carefully pulled them past your thighs and got them off your feet. Thank you. You smiled, sporting a grateful expression. The both of you were thankful it was dark, because each of you had blushing faces due to what happened under the covers.
You're very welcome.
Teku sounded distant when he replied. He attempted to act as normal as possible, but the air in the room was thick enough to suffocate you. Today was eventful, to say the least. Hey, Izuku? You called him, hoping you could surface his mind.
Oh, yeah?
He sounded attentive enough. Let's go to bed, okay?
That's a great idea.
In the stoic silence of your room, you eventually found yourself drifting into sleep. Izuku hadn't moved his hands from around your waist as he brought them up from your legs. You were glad, because if he had made any sudden movements in his startled state, he would have done more harm than good. It wasn't like the position of his hands was uncomfortable either. Soon enough, both of you were unconscious. It would be a shame if someone walked in that night. Oh well, not like they could find the room anyways.